But hey, we have something really, really special going on today. For those of you, most of you know him. His name is Pastor Nate Dukes. He is the leader of our dream team. He just wrote a book called You'll Never Change, How to Create Your Comeback and Prove Them Wrong. And it's incredible, incredible. Nate has one of the most inspirational stories I've ever heard in my life about the change that God did in him and through him. And he's going to share a little bit with us today. We're going to have a conversation. But I love that God is doing something so special in this house, that he's putting messages in people and stories inside of people that's not just helping our church grow, but Nate has taken this book and gotten to give it away for free at recovery centers, at recovery meetings, and it's helping people be introduced to Jesus and helping them grow. So without further ado, why don't you go ahead and give a huge round of applause to our dream team pastor, Pastor Nate Dukes. Awesome, awesome. Nate, how are you doing today, buddy?
Great. I feel really good right now.
That's amazing. Hey, you look really good. Before we get into the interview, this might be the most important question that I ask you before we get serious. I have noticed, right, you've been promoting this book on social media. It's been gaining some interest. I have noticed ever since you became an official author, you have a new look. You have what I call author glasses. What's the deal with the author glasses? There's superpowers in them? Does it help you sell more books? What's going on with the glasses?
So I'll tell you, one of the biggest changes that I made in my life was actually surrendering to my wife and allowing her, and there's some cheers in the room for that, letting her actually pick out what I wear. It's actually been very freeing for me. It's nice to know that she has better taste and style than I ever could have. Yeah. And so I'm thankful for her. But I'm a product of her process.
Yeah, that's a word for some of you gentlemen out there. Y'all look broke, busted, and disgusted coming in here. Y'all need to surrender to the voice of God, your wife in your life. But hey, I love your message. I just want to make a note. I actually wore these glasses trying to be like you.
Well, you look great, man. You look really good.
Not as good as you, but I'm trying. But hey, I love your book. Why don't you do me a favor? Just kind of give us a little bit of a snapshot of why you decided to write this book. First-time author, what motivated you? Hey, I want to get this story out there.
So they say a good book is a conversation that you have over and over and over again. And one of the cool things that I get to do is actually help people who feel stuck, who've experienced some failure in their life, and they are ready to make a comeback or make some changes in their life. So I took some principles that I used to change my life and really what God did inside of me, put it into a book to help people who struggle with self-confidence, who maybe don't have a vision for their life. And it's been a great tool because I'm so passionate about seeing other people make their comebacks.
Your story is so unique and it's so inspirational. You got to share a little bit last week with us. If you were here, you were watching online, you know that Nate did an incredible job preaching last weekend and sharing your story vulnerably. And it's such a powerful story. For those who maybe missed out, can you do me a favor? I know you can't go into all the details because you are really, really messed up and we don't have time to hit all of the messed up details. Give me the Cliff Notes version of your story.
Yeah, so growing up, we would call the poor family. We didn't have a whole lot, but there was this great church who would help take care of us, and I started going to this church, and even though they were really great people, I always felt like God was watching me, and he was waiting for me to mess up, and as soon as I did something wrong, he was going to punish me. And so when I went away to college at age 18 for the first time, man, I felt like nobody was watching me, and I went crazy. I got introduced to drugs and alcohol, and what started off as, man, like a weekend experience turned into a full-blown drug addiction at age 21. And through a series of events, I was able to get connected with a bar in downtown Youngstown where I could start my own business. And that was doing really well, but I was dealing with a drug and gambling addiction. And so I ended up stealing from the business bank accounts. One of the lowest points in my life, I actually was in a really bad place, didn't know who I was anymore, just taken a handful of pills, and I was walking around my parents' apartment complex looking for anything I could steal, anything I could sell, and I ended up finding the keys to a car, and I decided that I was going to take this car, drive it across the country, try and start my life over. I know it sounds crazy even me saying it out loud, but then I ended up, because you can't steal cars and drive them across the country. You're gonna get caught. And so I ended up getting caught right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, where they took me to jail, and I spent some time with the country boys out there. But it was a really beautiful moment because even though I was in this big mess of my life, God's grace actually showed up in that place. There was this church service that they offered, and man, I didn't fully understand what was happening in the moment, but God was in the middle of it. And then when I got out of jail, my little sister invited me to Rust City Church, and I was a very messy person, but there were people here who were willing to get messy with me. And so now my life looks nothing like what it used to. I mean, so I got married to my wife last year. We bought our home together. I wrote this book. I get to lead 209 volunteers on our dream team. Shout out to the dream team.
Give it up.
But it's not because I'm any good. It really is because he is so good and he's working through me now. When I was in control of my life, man, I'd find a way to mess it up real fast. But now that he's in control, I get to allow him to guide and direct my decisions that I make.
Yeah. One of my favorite chapters, I believe it's chapter 7 in the book. It talks about this moment when you're in jail and you have this encounter with the presence of God. And that was the thing that really, it kind of stood out to me that initiated your change. Can you dive into that moment and how it unfolded and what it really meant to you?
Yeah, so when I was in jail, it was a pod setup. So there was 16 guys that we would share essentially a cell with, and it was a big pod. It was cinder block walls, and the only time that we got to get out was once a month they'd offer a church service. Now, I was not interested in going to church, but man, I sure was interested in getting out and seeing some different things. And so we walked down this long hallway. There were chairs set up in the room off to the left-hand side, and as we sat down, this really old guy walked in, and he had this really, really old guitar. He was tuning it up, and he was kind of encouraging us, and you could tell he had a really great heart. And he started singing this song, "Amazing Grace." And as he was singing this song, I would look around the room, and I'd see, man, these people who had made mistakes, these people who had hurt other people, these people who were feeling very lost, start to really dive deep into the presence of the Lord, and tears were streaming down their face. And when you have an encounter with God, man, you can't help but respond to that. And I will tell you that I didn't fully get it in that moment. But what I did understand is that, man, God, if you're real, then maybe I can change. And I need your help in order to do that.
Well, what I love, and I think what's important for us in the room and online, there's so many people here, all of us, that maybe we feel like we can't change in life, or maybe there's areas of our lives that we feel like, man, it is absolutely impossible to change. And I think sometimes we look at ourselves and we think that change is a product of how good I am, or maybe change is a product of how much willpower or strength I can kind of stir up within myself. But how many people know God is so good that oftentimes when we aren't looking for his grace still comes looking for us? And I mean, you didn't go to jail intentionally. Like, maybe this is the place that I'll find God. I'll steal a car and then I'll meet God and my life will turn around. But at your lowest moment, in the middle of the mess, that's where God meets you. And that's who he is. You know, when we dive into the word, it says that he came to seek and to save the lost. And that's the baseline of change. When I am lost, I have no ability within myself to be able to find him and the things that I need to be able to start transformation in my life. But even though I didn't know where to step towards him, he stepped towards me. But after he makes that step, we have this option, this availability to start to take steps that he lays out for us. And they're steps of change. Can you kind of dive into a little bit, what does change actually look like? Right? God initiates me. Now, what does change look like from there?
Yeah, so there's a verse in Corinthians that talks about how we are a new creation when we accept salvation. That's great. That's awesome. But Webster will talk about how if what change is replacing something with something else. And what the gospel teaches us is that real change is when you replace something with someone. And so now that I have someone in my life, I have the ability to be this new creation. Which is great. It sounds really good, but the question is how do I actually become a new creation? How do I walk this thing out? Because I know that I'm new. I've had access to new. I've been told that I can new, but man, my life doesn't feel new. I still am making the same decisions that I've been making over and over again. So how does that work? Well, I will tell you, when I was 16 years old, I got my driver's license. It was an awesome time, man. Being able to drive for the first time, feeling freedom. But leading up to that, I had to drive around with my mom. Like, she would sit in the front seat and she would yell at me and she would scream at me because she was scared and she was nervous. But she was really trying to teach me how to become a driver. In that moment, I was a driver, but I was still learning how to be a driver at the exact same time. And so when we become this new creation, we're brand new people. We're still learning how to be new people at the same time too. So allowing him to take you on this process of saying, hey, you are new, but man, you got to learn how to be new too.
That's so good. When you talk about new creation, I think of 2 Corinthians 5:17. It says, this means that anyone who belongs to Christ, so we come to Jesus, we start a relationship with him, has become a new person. The old life has gone and a new life has begun. And I think when we really start to break that down, I love the last part of that verse, a new life has begun. And spiritually speaking, our spirits are joined with the Holy Spirit and we become new. But when it comes to our souls, our mind, the way that we think, our will, our intellect, we still have the same habits, the same unhealthy thought patterns, some of the same junk that we had before we came to Jesus. We still have that same junk now. But a new life has begun. Really, it's a relationship in which I have someone who has went before me, who's walking with me, that teaches me how to live this thing out. And I think it's important that we realize, you said the word journey, that change is a journey. Because if we aren't careful, we'll get so discouraged that I accepted a relationship with Jesus, but things aren't changing quick enough or fast enough that we'll give up on it. But when we allow ourselves the permission to say, hey, this relationship with Jesus, this is going to be a journey, learning how to figure this thing out. It really gives us the strength and the courage that we need and the discipline that we need to say, step by step, I'm going to start to live this thing out.
Well, and also too, I think it's important that my life is still in the process of being changed. So like some of the big stuff has changed, obviously. I'm not running around doing crazy stuff. But man, there's some parts of my heart that still need worked on too. I mean, ask my wife. There's some things that I say or
Should
do.
we get her up here?
Yeah.
And she can tell everything that you still need to change.
Yeah, she would actually be really thankful for that. Maybe it would help inspire some of that change. But there's parts of me that I'm still working on. And so I just want to encourage you, man, if you're feeling like, I don't have as big of a problem as you did, Nate, man, what are the areas in your life right now, if we're being honest with ourselves, that, man, God, maybe that unforgiveness doesn't look that great on me. Maybe that resentment, man, maybe that isn't as the type of person that I want to be, or maybe I'm not this person that everybody thinks that I am, because I'm still holding on to some trauma in my past that I need to heal from, and I need to let God actually touch inside of me. And so for me, I have to continually let him change who I am, not just the outside stuff, not just the stuff that, man, the decisions that I'm making, but ultimately who I am and who I'm becoming.
That's so good. I want to dive into, because I think it can be overwhelming, this idea of change. Let's get really practical for a second. We've kind of hit on, hey, the first step of change, Jesus is initiating you, a relationship with him, learning how to live out that relationship. But how do we start to learn how to live out that relationship? What are some really practical things, or maybe one really practical thing we can do to start to grow?
Listen, I think that hearing from the voice of God is something that we all have access to. We all have the ability to hear from the Lord. You know, he speaks to us directly. We can read the Word. We can read the Bible. The Bible talks about it's living and active. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. And so we can read the Bible and hear from God. But I will tell you, some of the most powerful and profound moments of God speaking directly to me has been through other people. Has been letting other people in my life be a mouthpiece for the Lord and speak into me. And so what psychology will tell us is that you are the sum total of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Science will tell us that you will make the average amount of money of the 5 people that you do life with. So knowing that, if we understand this principle to be true, I now have some personal responsibility to start to examine some of the fruit of the people that I let speak into my life. And if I look around and I say, whoa, I don't necessarily know if I like the direction that your life is headed, am I willing to, and this is tough for some of us, because when you start to speak on this, people say, well, Nate, are you telling me to give up on people? Are you telling me to walk away from somebody? Are you telling me I shouldn't be friends with them? And for some of us, yeah, For some of us, this is actually that permission that you need to walk away from that toxic relationship. This is a permission that you've been begging for to say, I deserve more, and I need the right voices in my life to help make the right choices in my life. And so for me, I just want to make sure that I'm surrounding myself with people who have God-centered lives, who are going in the direction that I want to go. And it is okay, and especially in the beginning when you're trying to make some change, to say, you know what? For a season, I'm going to walk away from this environment, from this place that is actually drawing and pulling me away from the plans and the purpose that God has downloaded in me, that he has placed inside of me, the things that he wants you to accomplish and do. I don't want to be pulled away from everything that God is doing in my life.
So when you first started coming into Rust City and said, I need to surround myself with some new voices, who were some of the major voices of change that you surrounded yourself with?
You.
Really? Yeah, I just asked that question because I wanted you to say that.
Well, yeah. So when I first got here, you actually invited me out to go grab coffee, and you listened to my story, and you heard where I was at, and you said, Nate, I think you're in a really great place right now. I was so confused because I was not in a really great place at all. But you saw something inside of me. You saw what God was doing, and you started to really challenge me in some areas of my life that I needed to grow in. And I'll be honest with you, some of that stuff was tough, man.
What's some of the toughest stuff that I asked you to do?
Yeah, so like we talked about relationships that I was involved with. You asked me to step away from that first season. And then you also, well, first of all, because I was not in a good place to be able to date somebody else. But then you also challenged me to go to Rust City College, which I had no desire to do. I mean, I was a 30-year-old guy, and I felt like I had already accomplished things in life. You want me to start over again? But I will tell you, you took me to places that I didn't necessarily want to go, but I desperately needed to go. And because of that, now my life looks completely different than what it was.
Yeah, and I will give you a lot of credit and honor you for a second, because it's one thing to allow voices to speak into your life. It's another thing to actually listen to those voices and do what they say. There's a big difference between hearing and between listening. How many people who are married know you can hear your wife, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're listening to your wife. And I think the difference between hearing and listening is I hear it versus I allow it to become a part of who I am, and actually action comes from it. And you're willing to take action steps, and action is the agent that leads to change. So props to you for that. And before we close here today, I just want you to encourage people. What would you say, I want to take one step right here, right now to change? What is something that someone can do?
Yeah, so when I started to serve other people, it was amazing when I got my hands on other people's problems, how all of a sudden it felt like, man, I don't know if you've ever tried to fix your problems. I gotta get in there. I'm gonna figure this out, and I don't know what. But as soon as I got my hands off my own issues and I was focused on somebody else, it's like God had the ability to then get his hands on my problems. And so I would just encourage you, man, if you haven't got the chance to start to serve somebody either at Midweek Outreach or joining our Dream Team, you can sign up for START, and they're going to teach you about what we believe as a church, how to get connected and plugged in. But they're also going to teach you our origin story, where we came from. And so for me, I just believe that serving other people can be so powerful on your journey to change, but also who you do life with, the group of people that you surround yourself with. So here at Rust City, we say that your growth as a human is connected to the group of people that you do life with. So I'm very intentional with who I am doing life with and who I'm connected to.
If you have come to Rust City for any point of time, you probably hear us encourage you. Go to START. Consider serving, consider joining a group. And we encourage you with those things because we believe that those are the things that not just change this valley and create a new possible for this valley, but they create a new possible for your life. Biblically speaking, you look at Jesus, and here's his strategy. When he starts his ministry, he gathers 12 group of men. And what does he do? They grow in community together. In other words, they establish a group and they start to grow. And then they go and they serve other people. The Bible says Jesus didn't come to be served. He came to serve others and lay down his life as a ransom for many. And he teaches these guys how to be in community and how to serve other people. And by the end of their lives, when they start this journey, they're a group of jokesters. Like, they don't even know what they think about Jesus, what they believe about about Jesus. And after 2.5 years, they go and they build the church. And the reason why we're doing what we are doing today is because their obedience to Jesus, to be in community and to serve other people. So I just want to encourage you, that is such an essential part of your growth and your journey to becoming more like Jesus and less like yourself. But do me a favor, before Nate leaves this stage, there's a couple of things that you can do, and I just want to encourage you. First, if you have not read this book, buy yourself a copy of this book. It's going to be for sale in the lobby right after this. You can talk to Nate about it a little bit more. I'm sure he would give you his autograph if that's something that you're interested in. Might be worth something someday. It's not a bad investment. But also, this is such a great tool to give to people who need some hope in their lives. This is not a book that forces Jesus down somebody's throat. It's not a deep theological book. But what I believe that it does is it plants seeds in people's heart that will come to fruition later when it comes to God's pursuit of them. So buy a book for yourself, buy a book for someone else. There's also something you could do called Pay It Forward. Nate, can you talk to us a little bit about paying it forward?
Yeah, so this is an initiative that I started. I've been able to go to different recovery meetings, rehab facilities, and share my message and story. And what I love is to be able to take this book and give it to them for absolutely nothing, for free. And I say that this is not a gift from me, but this is someone who believes in your story, who believes in you that's never met you before. And so when you pay it forward, you get to be a part of people's stories. Like there was somebody who read the book and said that, I read it with tears in my eyes because I felt like for the first time someone understood what I was going through. And you get to actually be a part of somebody's comeback story. I have such a heart for this area because there's people who had a heart for me. And man, there's 10 recovery meetings that meet here at Rust City Church. And there's 150 to 170 people that show up for these. Man, I would love to be able to give every single one of them a book for free with this Pay It Forward initiative.
Do you know how many books you've given away so far?
So total so far, we've given away 230 books. And by the end of the year, I want to be able to give away 1,000 books altogether.
Yeah, come on, give it up for that. That's incredible. Hey, you might be tired of clapping, but give it up for Nate one more time and everything God's doing in and through his life. We love him. We're so proud of him. We're so proud that his fashion has gotten so much better as well. But hey, before we get out of here, I just want to give you a chance to respond to everything that you've heard today. I think of a story in the Bible. Jesus is having a conversation with a man named Nicodemus. And Nicodemus, he comes to him and he's asking him questions about what following him looks like. And Jesus tells him, if you want to experience the kingdom that goes on through eternity, but it starts with a relationship with me right now, then you must be reborn. And being reborn is this beautiful picture of completely restarting this spiritual life with Jesus. It's this admittance that I know that everything that I did up until this point on my own power and my own strength didn't work. So Jesus, I surrender to you. Lead me to a new life. And I want to give you an opportunity to accept that life today. Do me a favor, in a moment of privacy just between you and God, go ahead and close your eyes and bow your heads. If you're in here and you're saying, I walked in here and I resonate with that message because it's how I feel like I'm never going to change. There's areas of my life where I've just been repeating the same toxic and unhealthy patterns over and over and over again. Maybe you're saying, I have secret sin that nobody knows about. Can I tell you that God knows about it? In 2,000 years, he sent his one and only son named Jesus so that you could change. Jesus took every sin that you would ever commit upon his shoulders. He went to the cross and he died the death that you deserved. He paid the penalty that you can never pay for yourselves. And when he died on the cross, he was buried in a grave, but 3 days later, he rose again, defeating the power of that sin so that you could accept a relationship with him that lasts until eternity. A relationship that's going to keep you ever evolving and ever changing. Not because of your ability, but because of his transformational grace. And if you're in here today and you're saying, I want that, I want to be reborn. Maybe I don't know about Jesus and I walked in here and after hearing about him, I want a relationship with him. Maybe you used to have a relationship with him and you're saying, I want to restart that. I walked away and today is the day that I need to come back. If you want that fresh start with him, with no one looking around, you do me a favor, go ahead and just shoot your hand up and wave it at me real quick. If you want a relationship with Jesus, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Why don't we all together, whether you're here in the room or watching online, go ahead and repeat after me in prayer. Say, Jesus, I ask you to come into my life and free me from my sin. I believe that you died on a cross to set me free. And in this moment, I accept that sacrifice. I no longer live for me. I live for you. So in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Hey, can you give it up for everything God's doing today?